The Overwatch team did a Reddit AMA about perks, and it seems they have some big plans with the new feature. Let's have a look. Perks have been out for a few weeks now, and it seems the reception has been rather good. Although we can all agree that some perks need a little work. And Blizzard is very well aware of that. This was their first take on a new feature that will take our familiar game to a next level. And they are being very transparent in the ways that they hope to evolve this feature. Alec Dawson, Kenny Hudson, and Scott Kennedy did an AMA or Ask Me Anything over on the competitive Overwatch Reddit. And some of the info they shared was pretty detailed. They seem to have a pretty good idea on how they want to move this feature forward, while they also understand which questions still need to be answered. But nothing is set in stone. Team 4 is open to evolving this feature in any direction that we want it to go. Again, proving that Team 4 is listening to us. If you don't believe that at this point, well, yeah. Now, the AMA was mainly about perks, although some people tried to sneak in some other questions about Stadium and whatnot. However, this team is trained and they kind of managed to stick to the perks questions for the most part. Okay, there were a few questions about other topics that they answered, and some of them were pretty interesting, but I'll keep those for the end of the video, so make sure to stick around. First, let's start out with their goals. What do they hope to achieve with the perk system? Global dominance. Well, among others. Actually, there's two sides to the story. The main side, of course, being us, the player experience. And they wanted to give us something new and fun to play around with. Pretty simple. On top of that, they also wanted to give us more agency over our Overwatch experience and help us increase the situational viability of our favorite heroes. Before Season 15, every hero had a list of benefits and drawbacks, which is part of the counter philosophy that has been part of Overwatch since the launch back in 2016. Perks, however, add a little more flexibility to those lists, a little more stretch. And they do that without breaking that core philosophy of you being allowed to counter any hero that is picked. Now, it did add some friction. Scott Kennedy shared during that AMA that counter picking had dropped with 25% and more with the launch of Season 15. On the higher halos, it was even better, because that was their goal all along. They wanted to leave us the option to counter swap, but it had to come at a cost. Perks also allow us to shortcut some of the weaknesses of our favorite heroes. They can also add mobility to some of the heroes that are usually not that mobile. And there are some perks that just lean into a certain fantasy that a lot of players have been asking for. So that is what perks are supposed to do for us as players. And they do a pretty good job at that. Now for the team, for the developers, it gives them a few extra buttons to push, levers to pull. You know, controls. Ways to keep the game feeling fresh and interesting without having to do any of these big shakeups. I've talked about this plenty of times before, but the team had kind of painted themselves into a corner. They were trying to please a wide range of players, all with their different playstyles, their opinions, and their skill levels. To the point where anytime they would do a change to help out one group, they would piss off another group. On top of that, all of their balancing efforts had left them with very little options to do anything else. It became very rigid, which is not a good thing for them, but it definitely is not fun for us as players. Now, with perks, they can give us options, and they can watch which options we pick, how we use them, and how we react to them, which is all very viable data. Data they can use to switch things up occasionally. And again, without having to shift the core balancing too much, which is their plan. They're going to do that every 6 months. And the first time is going to be in Season 18. Now before that, in mid-season, Season 15, which is in just a few weeks, they're going to do some minor balancing with the perks and the core kits. They gave some examples, like Hog Toss is also going to kind of amplify the damage that Roadhog's Trap does. Juno's double jump reset is going to extend her glide duration. And then for Bastion, for instance, his self-heal is going to get a resource, like it had at one point. Actually, I think that one might come a little sooner, not sure. But anyways, it's all going to be stuff like that. They're going to do more updates like that at the start of Season 16, but that is also going to be the moment that they're going to look to swap some of the perks out and replace them by others. They already have a few perks in mind that they want to swap out. Originally, they had introduced some of these perks that would give you a strong benefit, but that came at a certain cost. Now, before they actually launched it, they already felt that that might not be the way to go, that those might not be the most viable options. And looking at the data that they had for these first few weeks, it turns out that their hunch was correct, that those are not the most popular picks. For instance, Sombra has a perk that will make her hack last longer, but she'll have to be at a closer distance to actually hack someone. soon, so she'll be at risk. Not a popular pick. That one is getting replaced. In the future, they want to kind of focus on perks that lean into a certain playstyle that will help you on a certain map that you're playing on or on how your game actually is going. And they'll take that philosophy along to Season 18 when they do their first refresh. They hope to change about 25 to 50% of all the perks, which is a very wide window, but they're either going to replace the perks or at least change them that they feel very different. Every hero will have at least one new perk to work with every 6 months. But don't panic, they also said that they're not going to touch any of the popular perks. That would be kind of risky indeed. On top of that, these refreshes are also going to be the moments that they kind of evaluate the whole system, the whole framework. Because over the last few months, they've went over a few iterations of the whole framework. They started out with a system that would just automatically level up your character and you didn't have a choice. It would just be one perk that you get every level. But that turned out not to be any fun and not really different enough. And then at some point they had 4 levels instead of 3, which is something I actually suggested in a previous video after my first experience with perks back at the Spotlight event. After that test, I felt like the steep rise to power made games snowball or freeze up, depending on what side you're on, pretty fast. I also said in that video that might partly be due to the fact that I was playing out of my league. I was playing with a lot of top 500 players. Now it turns out, now that I got to play it on my own level, that was part of the problem. Yet, I can still feel that is a thing. It's just not as bad as I had it back at the Spotlight event. In any case, they landed on 3 levels. For now, I'm okay with that. They are open to changing that at some point, but we'll see. Other stuff that they tried and did not implement, but that they stay open to maybe introducing at one point, is presetting your perks. Now, they had that in mind when they started out with perks. They actually had an interface for it. But as they started testing the feature, they noticed it kind of restricted the situational choices that you should be making with your perks. Quite important part of the whole concept. On the other hand, they won't allow us to change our perks once we made the initial choice. And the reason for that is that they want it to feel like meaningful choices. Look, I get that, but I don't agree. I actually feel that this is very contrary to the philosophy of perks. They should be situational. Situations change. So you should be able to adjust according to that situation. And sure, I get it. You need to commit. In game design, commitment is an important thing. It's rare. But in this case, the only time you feel that commitment is when it does not pan out. Because you made the wrong choice, which might not even have been intentional. You could have just misclicked and then be stuck with that one perk that you did not want for the rest of the match. I really think that they might change their mind on this one somewhere in the future. But what do you think? Should you be able to change your perks after you made that initial choice? Let me know in the comments. But look, that refresh sounds pretty good to me. Every 3 seasons or every 6 months, they'll get to shake up the game without having to do a huge overhaul or a rework. And they have a ton of ideas on how they can do it. Which kind of makes sense with Stadium being around the corner. I mean, I know that the stakes and the goals for those 2 modes are very different, but I do think they're going to interchange or at least inspire each other for some of the benefits that they're going to make available. One of the ideas that they mentioned during that AMA was that Torbjorn was going to be able to launch himself by double jumping on his turret. Ah, yes. If he does not make a Mario reference at that point, I'm going to be very disappointed. I might actually flip Aaron's desk twice. As I can. Anyways, as promised, some of the other questions that they answered. For instance, Ramatra is going to be next in line to get his dancing mod, and it should be soon. Most players are not going to care about that one, but for Ramatra players, this is the best news they're going to get all year. When asked what other weapon archetype they had in mind, Kenny Hudson shared that a flamethrower has been a popular topic in the design meetings. And if they ever find a way to make that very epic, it might actually happen. Yes, please. And the final one is actually a pretty big one. It is about Clash. According to Alec, Clash has potential, and I wholeheartedly agree. That mode really has its moments. But yeah, it was removed from competitive play with the start of Season 15. And that is because it's not in a good place. And the issues that mode currently has are tied into the scoring and the geo, or the map layout. Now, just before they pulled it out of competitive, they had a pretty good idea on how they could fix the scoring. And they have been working on a brand new map for Clash that has a completely different layout. So the team is very hopeful that that new layout combined with the new scoring should get Clash to the point where it needs to be. So, fingers crossed. Not those fingers. For now, however, that was it. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. It always helps me out. I also want to thank my patrons and YouTube members. You too can become a member over on patreon.com/theomnicpost and right here on YouTube to unlock exclusive rewards. If you have a few minutes left, maybe check out one of my other videos. But above all, Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. Bye-bye.